The sponsor for today's webcast is Zola Suite. Zola Suite is a sleek and modern cloud-based practice management software application with sophisticated time tracking, billing, and accounting capabilities. The Zola Suite data team can migrate your data and documents from existing legacy applications such as Tabs 3, Pro Law, and PC Law. Our presenter today is Jerry Martin. Jerry is a partner with Software Analysis Corporation and a member of Crosspoint Consulting Group, LLC. She holds her undergraduate degree in accountancy and is a CPA. This gives Jerry the business background needed to understand the financial and management implications of implementing software and business processes. She started working with attorneys in 1986 and focuses on supporting attorneys, law firms, and law departments. So with that, I'll unmute Jerry, hand the presentation over to you. And Jerry, you can begin. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Carolyn, and welcome to everybody. I would also like to thank ALA Legal Marketing, our marketplace, and Zola Suite for this opportunity. And I really want to thank you for taking the time to attend this session. It's really important for you, and hopefully it will grow your skill set and help your firm. So what I would like to do is talk about looking ahead. During this session, we're going to talk about moving ahead. We're going to talk about understanding the benefits of planning for a new year, identifying areas to be viewed, and establishing a plan for the year-end review. I would like to conduct a poll at this time, if we can, and ask Carolyn, you should see the poll come up on your screen.
Yes, there's a poll open now on the right-hand side of your screen if everyone wants to go ahead, and I see some answers already starting to come through. And we'll just take a minute to kind of gather some of those responses before displaying them to everybody. But the question is, does your company do year-end planning? The first answer is yes, 1099, budgeting, financial statement cleanup. Second answer is yes, non-financial planning, rates for next year, update client agreements, archive. Third answer is no, we scramble at the beginning of the new year. And the fourth answer you can choose is yes, we do some planning, but we still scramble. So I'll give everyone just another few seconds before closing that, and I'll display those results in just a moment.
Okay, thank you.
All right, looks like most of our responses have come across. Again, it'll take just a few seconds for that to come across, and you can go ahead and continue.
All right, thank you. So we're going to talk about what are the benefits of planning. So, you know, when you plan, we're going to align your planning to your firm's goals. So your firm has certain objectives that they wish to meet, and you should create plans that go along with that. So let's take a look at how well you're doing, how well people think that they're doing. Generally, as I expected, most firms are doing the financial stuff. And that's usually where all the emphasis comes in, is that at the end of the year, everything is focused on financial information. There's very little non-financial, which is the point of this particular presentation. No, we don't do any, and we scramble. And yes, we do some of it, but it still is the second largest answer. It still is coming back to haunt us. So we're going to talk about things that we can do to avoid that. And some of the things that we need to do is planning the firm's goals. And when we have the firm's goals in mind, our plans should go to support those goals. By making a plan and assigning responsibility for the activity, because I can plan as much as I want from today till tomorrow. I've always planned to have a clean house. And guess what? No, my house isn't clean because I don't have anybody to assign that responsibility to. My children are gone, so I can't make them clean the house anymore, so I don't have anybody to do it. So I need to have some place to assign responsibility for activities that I've planned on. You have to identify deadlines, because having a plan and having responsibilities and not telling somebody when it needs to be done, then that means that you're going to do it when you get around to it. And around to it's never seemed to be in large supply. People have other things and they have deadlines that they have to meet. And by assigning tasks and identifying deadlines, I guarantee you it's going to show you some giant holes in realistic expectations. Everybody wants to do everything, and you have to figure out what can you realistically accomplish. Just as in any project, it's three-pronged. You have, imagine a stool. If I have a stool with 3 legs, and I chop one of the legs in half, and let's say that I say I'm going to chop off the time that I'm going to give you to do something. Well, the one leg represents time, one leg represents money, and the third leg represents the amount of activity you can get done. If I take time away from the plan, then those other 2 legs have to get chopped down too. You have to spend less money, and you're going to have to cut down the amount of work that's going to be done. I cannot get everything done in the same amount of time with the same amount of money and the same amount of activity. So something has to give. And when you can keep that stool in balance, it's going to keep your life in balance. You've controlled unrealistic expectations. You've been able to point those things out. As a project manager, I have my project management degree, and as a project manager, when people would come to me and say, I want you to do this, yes, we really need all of this. It's going to be $10,000, let's say, and we really need it all, but we really don't want to spend $10,000 on it. I can nod and I can give them the tasks and the activities and say, okay, which one of these things don't you want me to do? And we can eliminate those things until we get down to $5,000 worth or whatever it is, or push it out longer, or, increase the amount of, decrease the amount of things that we're going to do. So you can do that. And that reduces chaos in my life and in yours, because if we try to do unrealistic things, it never comes out well and it's very stressful. I need to go to the next slide here. So we're going to identify areas to be reviewed. So these are just a suggestion of some of the areas that you can review. Financial, everybody does that. There's a million webinars about it. It's a necessary evil, but it's not part of this presentation. Management of your practice is one of the areas I'd like to talk about today. There are many more areas that you can look at, but I wanted to give you just a smattering of things that you can consider. Document management. How are you going to manage all those documents that keep growing in your office? And your firm's presence on the internet. And many of you may say, well, we don't have any firm presence. We don't, we have a website, or we don't even have a website, whatever. But you're on the internet, whether you want to be there or not. I promise. People will find you. So let's talk about how to manage your practice. And here's just some examples. Now, at the end of this session, I have sample plans to show you, to give you some ideas of things that you can start with. It's a lot easier to create a plan from an existing suggestion until you get the flow of things, and then you make it your own and you develop it the way you need it for your firm. So keep in mind it's always generic at this point. So let's talk about closing matters in your practice management program. Now, some of you may be saying, I don't have a practice management program. We use spreadsheets. We use, whatever. And that, in fact, is a practice management program. It doesn't necessarily have to be software. So you want to make sure that you have the dates when a file is closed. So why? Why do you care? You need to record the date, because if you don't record it, You will not know when to do document destruction, which is part of the next conversation. But also it's important for practice, for management reporting. How many matters did I open this year? How many matters did I close this year? Do we need more? Those kinds of things will help you determine, do we need more staff? Do we need to be able to close things faster? Do we need more efficiency? There's lots of things that can be answered just by having data. And we tend so much to concentrate just on our billing programs and not understand all the valuable information that we have in so many of those programs. If you don't have a closed field in your practice management software or Excel spreadsheet or something, it's real easy. Just add one. You want to know the date that it was closed, not just that it's closed, not just the status of it being closed. If you don't know the close date because you're trying to clean this up from inception, nobody knows the close date. If you actually just look in the file or online in your folder for your client's matter, just look at the last piece of activity that was recorded, and then add 1 month to it and declare that the close date. It doesn't have to be an exact science. It's just going to give you an idea of when things ended, because a lot of us don't have a formal close process. I once went into a firm to help them with their billing software, and they were mostly flat fee clients, they had flat fee clients. And I uncovered, I swear to you, I'm not exaggerating, $1 million of revenue that they never billed because it was flat fees. The attorneys never bothered to record their time or to close the matter. They simply wrote closed across the file folder, handed it back to their assistants, who then took it and put it in a file cabinet, and the final bills were never issued. So it's really important to have some methodology of closing your file, and it's more than just writing closed across the front of the cover. And let's talk about the differences between closing, archiving, and purging. Now, the terminology may be slightly different if you're using a software package, but on your spreadsheet, you mark something as closed, that's fine. But in your software package, sometimes it's just a little checkbox where you check off that it's closed. And when you hit that checkbox that says it's closed, it moves it off of a tab that says active or open matters, and it moves it to closed matters. And nothing really happens to it. It just kind of hangs around. Some of them call that, archiving the matter. So we're moving it off somehow out of our active client list or active matter list, and we're putting it someplace else, a little bit out of sight, but not out of touch. But then they also often have a purging capability. You never, ever, ever, ever want to purge a matter. And the reason that you don't want to do this is that you have to run conflict of interest checks. And your conflict of interest check better check not only your current open matters, it needs to check all matters, or you could find yourself in some serious trouble. Purging literally means deleting it. And once it's deleted, it's gone, and it will never show up in a conflict check. So that's a problem. I typically do not move a matter from open to archive or to close on a software package until it's been around closed for more than a year. Now, when your software packages and you have that checkbox that says closed, it automatically moves it. So I don't like that, because if I'm running a report that says to me, how many matters did we close this year? Typically, we're running those reports right off the open matter list. Well, it's not there anymore, so we're really getting not an accurate report of how many matters we closed. I have a lot of clients who make this mistake. They close the matter and they're so exuberant that they close it immediately. As soon as closed is written across that file folder, they click that checkbox and it closes. Well, then all of my reporting for the year, I want to see productivity, I want to see profitability, I want to see all these things. Those matters aren't there to report on because you've moved them to a closed file. Now, you can sometimes report on both open and closed, but you have to be careful that you do that because by default, that's not the choice. The choice is always running on an open matter. So you want to make sure that if you can't do that, what you should do is set up a closed field as a custom field in your matter, in your practice management software, a closed field, and call it the date of closing, but don't check the box that it's closed. One of the reasons that we do eventually want to get them off the list is that we have sometimes too many. If I have Sally Smith and she buys a house and we handle the real estate closing, I have I forgot her name already. Sally Smith, real estate closing. And then 5 years later, I have Sally Smith real estate closing because she closed another house. People will just keep picking the very first one that comes up on their list. So we want to get them out of there so that they're not posting information to the wrong matters. Okay, let's move on to human resources. This is just another area. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot the Christmas cards. I love the Christmas cards. This is the dreaded thing. Everyone, it's like rats running from a sinking ship when somebody starts to talk about sending out holiday cards. Because nobody wants to do it. Trying to aggregate the information from everybody's contact list in Outlook or your practice management package, going through them, deciding who gets a card, who doesn't. Your practice management software can help with that, but you really should have a field to indicate when someone is deceased so that we do not send deceased people holiday cards. Nothing says I care about you more than sending it to somebody who is passed on. So you want to be careful about that. So you have the ability in your software package to add these custom fields so that you can filter and sort on them. And you even have that capability in Outlook. You can have fields that say somebody is deceased or it's a son or a daughter or whatever. You can build those things out. We're going to move on to human resources. Just some ideas for you in your practice that year-end bonuses. If you're going to do year-end bonuses and you've done them every year, there is no reason to wait for December 23rd for the managing partners to sit down and say, we should give bonuses. Okay, they sit in a room, they decide what the bonuses are going to be, and then they come out to you and say, okay, give these bonuses. So everyone else goes home on December 23rd while you're busily, trying to plead with the payroll company or doing it yourself to get bonus checks cut and in the mail because it's not part of your payroll. So there's plenty of time at the beginning of December or even in November to determine what year-end bonuses are going to be or when they're going to be so that they're not a scramble, so that you can get them that information into your payroll service or you can plan for it. Paid holidays. We all know we're going to have paid holidays next year. We don't have to wait till January 1 to come out with the list of paid holidays. We can do that now. We can decide it now. We can get it off of our plate so that on January 2nd, when everyone somehow imagines that they're going to actually be going anyplace in this pandemic, they'll know what their holidays are going to be. Sometimes accrual for paid time off is going to change. We have people who have been here more than 5 years, so now they get 3 weeks vacation. You can plan for that and decide this in advance so that your very first payroll doesn't have to be a nightmare. And finally, very few firms do this, but you are supposed to ask your employees to update their withholding forms, their W-4s every year. All right, let's see what our next slide has for us. Document management. I want to talk a little bit about document management. and I've broken it down into 3 areas: a retention plan, a storage management plan, and a document destruction plan. So in a retention plan, this is how we're going to retain our documents. How long by document type should something be retained? So if I have a will or a medical power of attorney or something else, how long as the law firm do I need to keep these documents on file? So you should come up with a listing by type of matter or document type, how long these things should be retained. You should also decide where they should be kept. Are you keeping things physically or electronically? Most firms that I go into, despite the fact that they all say that they're trying to get into a paperless law office, do not achieve that. They're still keeping physical files. People still process information better when they see it on a printed page as opposed to on the screen. So even if we do scan it and store it up in the cloud, when our attorneys go to use them or our paralegals go to use them, they often print them anyway. So we have a combination of both of those things, physical storage and electronic storage. So we're going to develop plans that are going to address this. Where are they going to be kept? If they're physical, are they going to live on the attorney's chair in his office that hasn't been sat on for 5 years because he's got all of these file folders stacked up on them? Or are they going to be stored on our server? Are they going to be stored in the cloud? You need to consider security and what that means in terms of not only physically locking file cabinets or excluding password protection on your cloud storage and things like that. You need to look at security within your own documents that you're storing or your own software program that's storing your document information, your practice management information, and so on. For example, a lot of firms, I see this all the time, are capturing their client's social security number in full, which you legitimately may need, but they're capturing it, and it is in that file, it's in that program for everyone to see, everybody. Doesn't matter who they are. Anybody who can get into that particular matter can see credit card information, social security information, financial information, medical records, or whatever. If you have the ability to lock these things out in your practice management package, that's great. Most of them can't get down to that level. Most of them can only get to the level of you can either see the matter or you can't. Some of them are more sophisticated. There are programs available out there that literally lock so much as just a field in a document like social security number and blur it out. There's all different things that are available to you, but you should consider that these things are legitimate considerations for you. Responsibility for the process and the tasks. Again, going back to making a plan, I need to have somebody who's responsible for the process, and that's generally going to fall on the legal administrator. That you're responsible for the process, but that doesn't mean that you're responsible to do it all. You're responsible for overseeing the process. The tasks can be assigned to other people. Now, I don't know what size firm you're in. If you're in a large enough firm, you actually have somebody to delegate to. If you're in a smaller firm, sometimes you are the chief cook and bottle washer, and there is only you, and there's nobody to do it except for you. And if that's the case, then it goes back to those realistic expectations of what you can realistically get done. Maybe the answer is to bring in some part-time help, to bring in some intern or something that can help with some of these things. But you really need to have not only the process, but the tasks defined as well. And you should know somewhere when you have physical files, you should know at all times where they are. There have been numerous studies on how much time in a law firm is wasted every week on people just looking for a file. Anybody know where this file is? I don't know. I saw it on so-and-so's desk. Oh, no, yeah, it was on his chair. No, it's on her floor now. I think it's in the corner. It's never in the file cabinet where it belongs. And we're looking around, and always asking for this. You should always know. So you have various places that things should be stored, and we'll talk about that a little bit too in the plan, moving things from private offices to a file room to an intermediate storage in your file room, and finally long-term storage. And at all points in time, you should be able to put your hands on where that document lives. Let's talk about document storage management. Document storage management. So just general considerations, naming conventions. Right now in most law firms, what I find is that people create documents or receive documents, and the name is just willy-nilly, whatever it was named or whatever you feel like naming at the time. It makes it very difficult to find a document. So it would be a good idea for you to come up with naming conventions. In other words, how documents should be named. Depending on how you file your documents on a server, for example, it may be that you have a client folder on your server that incorporates all of your clients. So here's your client, here's your folder called clients, and underneath it is every client. And then under that, you should have some, if that's as many folders as you have, then when you're naming files for that folder, then it should be that client name, and it's a signed client agreement, and the client name and the original agreement or the revision 1 or whatever, and all of those documents should be in there underneath that client. Still makes it hard to find because the client can have many client agreements because should have one for every engagement that you do or every matter. So a good idea would be to have at least one client folder or only one client folder for a client, and under that a matter. And every client should have at least one matter but can have many matters. So each matter should be its own folder. And then you can name your files within that folder. There's no need to name the client, name the matter because they're in the folder. We know what they are. But then you might start them off with agreement dash signed or agreement dash original or agreement dash version 1. All of those things so that all agreements are together. Now, if you have the way to tag and profile things within your software, then that's great. Then you don't need to put those in your names. But somehow you want to be able to find as much information as possible in the name of the document, and you want them to be named consistently. You can't use slashes. There's many things, characters, special characters that you can use to divide them. Mostly the only thing you can use is pretty much a dash. So you want to say, okay, your first field ought to be the name of the document. The next field might be who created it. The next field might be the date of creation, both of which, by the way, you can find out anyway in Microsoft. But maybe your third thing is the type of document. It's an agreement. It's a closing statement or whatever, something like that tells it what kind it is. Most of these days, when we get information from other outside sources, it comes to us in the form of a PDF format. And what's inside that PDF is not searchable to us unless we have document capabilities to do OCRing. which basically means that it reads those scanned documents and it converts them into text, not literally, but it moves them into text so that you can, in fact, do a text search on a PDF file. I would really recommend that you get this if you don't have a document management package, because there's no way for you to do the profiling and the tags just within Microsoft Word or whatever package it's in. And not only that, sometimes you get it from an outside and you don't even have the source documentation. So you really should investigate getting some kind of OCR capabilities. You should be scanning these documents to reduce the cost of storage. Storage is very expensive. Office space is anywhere from $12 a square foot to as much as $60 a square foot. It's a pretty expensive file cabinet you have sitting there. So you want to reduce the storage to something that's online so that we're not keeping these things around. And let's talk about the difference between cloud storage and document management software, which are used interchangeably all the time, and that's incorrect. So cloud storage is going to be just merely a file cabinet like OneDrive or Google Docs or things like that. That's the kind of thing that's cloud storage. It's just like taking your server and moving it up to the cloud, which is fine, but it's not doing anything else for you. A document management package, on the other hand, allows you to keep all kinds of files together. You can have not only documents, but emails, your invoices. You can have client portals where you can share documents without emailing them through the mail, through email. You know, when you're asking your client for a charge card number, you really don't want them to email that. It gives you all that searching capability. It gives you all the versions of documents that you're creating. It allows you to profile documents, and it gives you security at a document level. So you want to make a distinction between what you want to do and how you want to do it, and you want to develop a plan for any of that. That's really moved to the end, sorry. So document destruction, you're going to move long closed matters, you're going to move them to long-term storage. You're going to calendar a date of destruction for your records so that you know when a file should be destroyed, so that they're not around forever. It also your plan, and I'll show you, you need to notify your clients before you destroy documents. So you need to have all of that calendared in. Determine what files are ready for destruction. Notify your clients, I said that, and then scan your documents. Scan documents that you can't destroy, that you're able to actually do scanning. Some things have to be maintained physically. Okay, firm presence on the internet. You should have a website. It doesn't have to be a sophisticated website. Go to GoDaddy if you need to and build your own, but you should have something out there. You should have some way for clients to find you. Did you know that almost every client, before they call you, will look at your website at least twice before they even pick up the phone? And they're looking for information like your expertise, what areas you cover, what your team does, you know, the people on your team, who they are, testimonies, client testimonies, things like that. So without a website, you can't get that done. You're going to develop a marketing plan to keep your website, and you're going to keep your website active and look at social media and get on that. How often are you going to post? If you don't have a marketing plan, you could hire somebody. Most firms don't want to do that. So you could do it yourself by just developing a calendar of how often you're going to post. I'm going to post once a month. I don't know what to write. You could write about industry articles that you read. You could literally let somebody else write the article, take the article that they've written, and talk about it. This was a great idea. This idea was not too good for us. This idea was not a great idea for us. or you should look at this or consider that. And so you're showing your expertise without having to come up with the idea as well. Social media presence. Here's a good one with social media presence. You should, everyone, write this down. You should set up Google My Business, it's called. Every business has this, Google knows of your business. And if you've ever looked sometimes out there, you're searching for a particular business and it says, are you the owner of this business? If you don't answer that you are, somebody else might. If you recall, there was an episode on Mad Men when Dick says to somebody, if you don't like what's being said, change the conversation. So you want to make sure that you have a website, that you've claimed the website, that at a minimum you've put information out there about your firm so that when people are looking for you, they can find you. Even if you don't have a website, they can find you under Google and the information will be there. So put something out there for that. It's free. So there's no reason to not do it. You don't need any expertise in that, and you don't have to worry about what they call SEO and all of this moving things up, for searching capabilities. It'll be taken care of for you to a large part if you at least put something out there. If your firm mostly deals with businesses, you probably want to set up some kind of LinkedIn account as your firm, and then individuals in your firm should set up LinkedIn accounts and associate themselves with the firm. You should use Facebook or Facebook types of places if you're mostly consumer, working with consumers. Facebook is a good place to establish a page. You can set up webinars and videos and post them to YouTube. That may be just way beyond what most of you are looking at. You can have simple conversations that you record, where you record a conversation about what to look for in a real estate lawyer, where somebody poses it almost like an interview, and you can record it and you can post those kinds of things. It's very useful to have all different ways to reach your audience. And finally, once you do establish this presence, even though you don't think you might have it, you need to monitor your online reputation. You need to see what people are saying about you. So the best thing to do is to ask your clients to give you a review and pick one or two places that you want them to post that review. If your end clients are mostly consumers, then you probably want to go with Yelp because that's where people are going to be looking. If otherwise, you might want to do places like Avo or Find Law, the Better Business Bureau, Legal Advice. Those kinds of places also might have ratings. The reason you want your clients to be able to do that and go out there for that is that one bad review, if there's only one review and it's bad, nobody's going to call you. If there's one bad review and 20 good ones, I'm more inclined to think, maybe that guy was a little off. If you get a bad review, contact the person that gave you the review. Ask if there's some way that you can resolve this. Maybe you can get it resolved. If you do, that's great. Ask them not to take it down. Ask them if they will write something else about it. Will they write a second review saying that they were satisfied? If you weren't able to satisfy them or they won't do it, then you should respond so that your response is at least out there in some form. Okay, so let's look quickly at, and this is going to be available to you in some form, the sample project plans. So here's one for, down at the bottom, I have one for practice management, document management, and firm presence. The individual lines, you'll see that, when you get it, but I wanted to go over what the categories were. So I divided this up into things that are related to general management of your practice, how to close clients, how to review rates. Rate changes are coming up. You don't need to wait till the 10th of January to scramble to input new rates when people have already been entering their time. General firm planning, human resources, whatever categories you want to come up with. Then what the task is, the due date for the task, who's responsible for the task. Now, I have made this so that they only have choices in what the status of the task is, because if you leave it open-ended, then people just write whatever they want. So they're either it's not started, it has started and it's in progress or process, it's on hold, I have a trial coming up, this is just not happening for the next 5 months or whatever, or it's completed. And then I have a section where they can put notes. Obviously, if it's on hold, it would be good if they added a note. Or if it's in process and they have an issue, what their issues are. So it's just a little placeholder for them. So I have that same theme going through the document management and the firm presentation. Let me stop sharing this for a minute, and you'll get that as part of the presentation. To wrap things back, identify your goals. There's firm goals, there's department goals, you have personal goals, and then you have those darn compliance ones, which don't matter whether or not you want to do them. You legally have to do those things. You're required by law to issue 1099s to vendors at the end of the year. It doesn't necessarily drive any one of your firm goals, other than that your firm probably has a goal to not to pay a lot of fines for not complying. So you want to identify what the goals are, and you want to make sure that your tasks or your categories that you're working on somehow fit into those firm goals or your department goals or your personal goals as an employee of that firm. Because if they don't align, then you really shouldn't be doing them, because you're not advancing the firm. And then finally, this is my grand dog. This is Gizmo, and he has lots of questions like, how did he get here? So I'd like to open it up for questions if there are any.
Thank you, Jerry. As I just chatted to everyone, if you do have some questions for Jerry, you can go ahead and put those in the chat box right now and chat them across to everyone for Jerry to answer. While I wait for a few questions to come across, just to allow everyone to know that tomorrow we will send an email with a link to a recording from this webcast. We'll also have a link to the slides from today, as well as that Excel spreadsheet that Jerry just showed you. So that'll come out tomorrow. Again, if anyone has any questions, you can go ahead and send them across. At this time, I only see one quick question, and Jerry, it's with all of these year-end plannings, at what point do you suggest starting the process of reviewing your year-end goals?
Okay, so that's really a good question, and I appreciate it. So here's the deal. If you try to do all of these things that I just talked about today, that's unrealistic. That's not going to happen between now and the end of the year. What is going to happen, whether you like it or not, what is going to happen, we talked about holiday cards. That's coming up. We talked about, let's take the example of rate changes. Typically, law firms decide at the beginning of a new year, they're going to have a new rate structure. And so they have to modify their new client agreements to reflect that rate structure. You're going to have to change the rate structure in your billing program. You're going to have to, in many cases, your client agreement says, you have to send them 30 days notice before you increase their rates. So by December 1, in theory, you have to have all those letters out. So there's a few things that you really need to do now. If you're not in accounting, then the 1099 vendor thing's not your headache. But if you are in accounting, you really need to start scrambling now to get your tax IDs from all of the vendors, the non-corporate vendors that you've paid over $600 to this year. You need to get that in place because that deadline comes up. Actually, it's a February deadline that you have to get that done by. But some of those, we are restricted to hard dates. And so those are the things that you should be looking at right now. And then you can actually start scheduling the planning process. And hopefully by the end of 2021, you will have these plans in place. You will have started to look at how to do closing files, the storage, where they're going to go, how people are going to name things, and start rolling that out through the year so that at the end of the year, you can run a report and say, okay, what files closed in 2019, because those are files we want to get off of our plate, and we want to get those closed in our software and maybe sent to longer term storage or scanned and uploaded somewhere. So hopefully that answered that question.
Okay, great. That's it for the questions that I have that have come across. So Jerry, again, thank you so much for all of your wonderful information, and thank you to everyone else for taking the time to join us. And like I said, we will send out an email tomorrow with links to the recording and the resources as well.
Great.
So thank you again.
Thank you, everybody, for your time.
All right. Take care. Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Bye.